Hey friends, welcome back. So I'm starting with 4 lengths of 20 gauge round, dead soft copper wires. And these are called frame wires. And like the traditional style that we just did last month where we used square wires and we used half round for banding, this time we're going to use round wires for the frame, or you can use square if that's what you got. And rather than half round, we're going to use 28 gauge round wires. And you cannot, I guess you could, it's a stretch, and maybe I'll show it sometime, but you really can't weave with half round. You want 28 gauge or 26 gauge, even 30 gauge, as fine as 30 gauge if you want to make, that fine of detail. But usually 28 gauge round is your kind of go-to, or my go-to weaving wire. It's delicate enough that you get a fine look, but it's strong enough that you're not going to fight it, every few turns for getting brittle or breaking. And I like to work with about 2 or 3 feet at a time. In this little case, I'm just going to have us cut 12 inches, so get you, 24 inches to get you used to the weaving wire. And because we wrapped a lot of flat stones last month, I thought I would start us off with a Herkimer Diamond, kind of an odd shaped stone for this month. These are beautiful. This is a natural shape. Someone showed me that they were using a druzy shell, and that was gorgeous, and it made me think, why don't we try, some odd shapes? This would be equivalent to tumbled stones, if you wanted to do tumbled stones this way, spear crystals, crystals that are longer and straighter, or crystals like this, or odd shapes like, tiny shell pieces. All those shells might be delicate, but you could do them this way. Marbles even. So anyway, it's the traditional frame that we learned last month, but we're going to weave the center. So I've got 4 bands of the 20 gauge round, and I'm going to find the approximate center of my wires. Some people like to hold on to these with a big wooden clamp. I don't do that. I put a spot of tape at the end of my wires, and then I just kind of hold them here in the middle. And I'm just going to fan these out into what I call kind of chicken feet, just like that. And it's okay if you put a slight bend on them. There's a lot of weaving patterns. I'm going to show you one, and it's going to be nice and quick so that we can capture this stone, and it'll be easy for you to learn. Whoop. I'm not paying attention to what I'm doing here. I got off center. Okay, so I'm in the center of my wires. I'm holding them all together, and I'm just going to spread them out a little bit like this, and it's okay to cause that tiny bend. They'll weave back together. I'm going to insert a leading 1 inch of my weaving wire just so I have something to hold on to so it doesn't travel while I weave. And I'm just, I kind of run my fingers over the weaving wire to straighten it out, make sure there's no kinks, and I just let it fall to my side like yarn would do if you were knitting. So I'm going to change this focus so that you can see a little closer. Alright, so I'm holding on to my little fragment. I'm going to make what are called single coils. And just to make it easier on us, this lower wire is going to be called 1, the next one's going to be called 2, the one up here is 3, and the very top one is number 4. So, so I've got my weaving wire, and just to anchor it, I'm going to make a couple of wraps around frame wire 1. And although weaving wire is small like thread, we can't treat it like thread. So we can't whip our wire in here like this, okay? What we want to do is place or pre-bend the wire, slip it through each one of these frame wires into a pattern that we learn. There are many of them. And then, land it next to the coil previously, whether that coil is a single row coil or one that, weaves up and down. So you'll see as we start. So I like to make a couple of wraps around the frame wire 1 to anchor it, and then I'm going to show you a little, I don't know, maybe it's called the fern weave. I don't have names for them, but you'll see. And we'll just push this wire up. I'm going to slip it through wires 2 and 3 and help seat it. Okay, the tension needs to be so that you have just a slight gap in between each of these frame wires. I'll come all the way back down, and there's no bubble. I've got a nice, flat lay on this weaving wire, and I'm going to come back up and go over wire 3 and wire 2 and wire 1 in one big push, just a pre-bend there. I'll slip the weaving wire in between frame wires 3 and 4, and I'll come back all the way down to wire 1, and I'll pull them, snug, and I'm kind of guiding my frame wires as I go too, to keep these gaps as consistent as I can. And now with the next wrap, I'm going to go all the way up and pre-bend over the entire stack. Just work carefully if you're not used to weaving, and keep your weaving wires, nice and neat and unkinked. For those of you that know how to weave, you'll just do 4 rows of these points. So, or 4 segments, I mean. So now I've gone all the way up over the top, I've come all the way down the bottom. I'm going to pre-bend, and now I'm going to make this stair step back down. I'm going to pre-bend the wire up. I'm going to insert the weaving wire between frame wires 3 and 4, help scoot it over with my fingernail, and come back down to wire 1 from the back. So I'll show you the back. It's starting to look just like the front. And that's why I like to start with this one, because the back and the front will look the same. I'm trying to hold this so that I'm comfortable here, so that you can see. Okay, so to step down again, I'm going to mirror the opposite side, and I'm going to pre-bend my wire up. I'm going to insert my weaving wires between frame wires 2 and 3, push it over, and bring it back down. Now do you see, if I pull too tight, these two start to collapse in. So I just, want to keep them consistent. I like to put the pad of my finger behind it so that I can see what I'm doing, and it also kind of helps me keep these rails consistent. Okay, and so now, to make it all the way back down, I'm going to do 2 coils like I started out with on the first frame wire. 2 single coils. There goes one. I'm just going to push everything back nice and tight, lift up, come in here, and there goes my second coil. Okay, and this is called a segment, a weaving segment. I'm going to tighten this first one up here. Just hold on to it. Ooh, trying to let you guys see. Hopefully this is good focus. You can separate these segments with these single coils, either, by 2 coils like we did here, or you could do 5 coils to make it more defined. I generally separate these decorative segments by, 5 coils. So I've got two, just because I like to see them. I just like some space. So I've got two single coils. I'm going to make 3. And I've got my fingernail here to brace, you know, all of this from traveling as I weave against it. So there goes 3, there goes 4, and there goes 5. And now I'm going to just repeat the pattern. See, I'm just sticking my fingernail in here, and I'm keeping my chicken feet. Okay, and I'm just going to repeat the pattern now. I'm going to jump up and over frame wires 1 and 2, push my wire over, come back down to frame wire 1, gonna pre-bend up, jump between frame wires 3 and 4, push it over, come back down to 1, gonna jump up and completely over all the frame wires. When I pull down on this 4th one, I'm just gonna make sure that I got a nice even space between my gaps. Okay? And then I'm going to come back up, going to insert between wires, I should count them backwards, 4 and 3, and come back down and go up, go in between wires 3 and 2, come back down, go up, and make 5 single coils around frame wire 1. Okay, I am landing each coil. I'm not whipping it. The reason we don't whip the coils like this is because, you know, you get odd, uneven pulls if you do it that way. And you want to land each coil next to each other, because if they spread out too far, then when you push them back, that also gives you uneven coils. You see that? So I'm just going to undo those two. So if you need to undo this tiny wire, you just unravel it and then scrape against it gently to take those little bends out. You probably get away with that a couple of times before it'll be too brittle right there to do that again. So just be aware of that. So then I like to, you know, tap them down. You can do this with nylon jaws or gentle taps of a metal plier. Push them together. Okay? So what we're doing right here at the center of our wire is, remember in the previous month, we put half round bands here. We made, you know, 5 wraps, then we made a little space, then we made 5 wraps, and then we bent that into a V shape and brought the frame around the rock. Well, in a sense, that's kind of what we're doing here. I'm going to do that same wrap. So instead of half round, I've weaved 2 segments. And then I'm going to weave 2 more segments, and the reason I chose these particular single segments is because the end of them, once I bend them, you know, lands me right about here, which means I can pull in and come around this stone and catch it without disturbing this groovy little crystal protrusion I have. I don't know what they're called because I'm not a geologist, but isn't that just the cutest little baby crystal growing out of that Herkimer? And I don't want to disturb that. So anyway, there's some logic to this, but for now we'll go 2, and then rather than, you know, cutting and skipping over, I've done 5, and then I'm just going to start another 5, right? And then repeat the pattern on the other side. So I do already, or I could do 15 if I want to. We'll see if another 5 is enough. I think 5 is enough. It's a small stone. So that's the center of my wires. All right, so now I'll just repeat these 2 little segments, you know, on the other side. So I'll go up and in between, because I've already made my 5 coils, up and in between frame wires 2 and 3, and then back down again to 1. And then I'll go up and over and in between frame wires 3 and 4, and then back down again to 1. Then I'll go up and completely over all 4 frame wires. I'll watch this last pull, and then my finger helps me smooth down the back. Make sure that my nice rows are still with us. Okay, and then I'll go back up in between wires 4 and 3 so that I climb back down the frame wires as I move overhanded. Come back down, and then I'll go up in between wires 3 and 2, and then back down the back. Then I'll go up. I'll make 5 coils on the first frame wire. Okay, and then I'll go up and repeat the last segment. Up, in between and over frame wires 1 and 2, and up, in between and over frame wires 1, 2, and 3, then up and over all 4 frame wires, and all the way back down to 1, then up, in between frame wires 4 and 3, then up, in between frame wires 3 and 2, back down the back, and up, and 5 single coils. Okay, I know you're saying, oh, we only have 2 over there. It's okay. I got these little bits here, so I'll just add a couple. Here's number 4. There goes number 5. So I know I don't need this little fragment anymore, so I'm going to trim it with the end as close as I can get it to the gap in between these frame wires. Hope you can see that. And I'm going to use my plier, tap on that very last one, make it tight, and turn it up and in between them. Did you kind of see that? Doesn't need to be all that special. It will hold. I'm doing this at the end here because it's the end one. You know, if I were going to weave more, then I might not have to be as careful. So this one too, I'm going to make sure that I have 1, 2, 3, 4. This one's the 5th one. So come over here. I'll just end this one long. Cut it right there. Sometimes this camera is kind of a benefit because I can hardly see this when I'm doing it with my own eyes. See that? I kind of got the end in between these frame wires. Like I said, don't stress yourself. Just squish it down. Okay. All right. And then we will tap the little bubbles out of our weave with gentle tap taps. I'll push my segments together carefully. There we go. Very cute. All right, so I'm going to release the tape now on my wires over here. If you didn't have any, that's okay. And if it's easier for you to keep the tape on, that's okay too. And if it's easier for you to, tape both sides to make these next bends, we can do that too. I'm going to back this camera off so we can come back down here. All right, so in between there is where we're going to bend this into a V shape. I have weave there, so doing it with my metal plier is probably not the best option. So here's where some nylon jaws will do you some good. And I'm looking for equal distance between this coil and this coil. So I'm going to just eyeball where my nylon jaw is. And I'm not really, pressing hard. I'm just holding it. And I'm going to cause this bend in between those two coils as evenly as I can. Maybe I'll tape this so that you can see it better. Give me a second, I'll put some tape right here. So I'm just going to put some tape about right here. Help me hold these together while I come around the gem so we don't get ourselves confused. It's easier for you also. So tape your wires back up. I know I said take them off, but put them back on. Okay, so I've got this nice V shape going on at the center of my wires. My decorative weave has a point. So this particular weave, so I'm going to point these, just be mindful of if your stone actually has a front or a back. Mine is, this Herkimer is gorgeous on all sides. So I can use any weave here, but I'm going to put those points to the front top. Whoop! Okay, so that you can see it. It's going to sit like this. Now, where that upper coil is, that first frame wire, I'm going to bend inward to catch a tab. But because this is irregular shape, these wires actually grip these little gemstones pretty well. Alright, so the gemstone isn't going to sit 100% flat. So you can do it either in your hands or, you can balance the wire in between, hover it on the gemstone. I kind of like to do it up in the air. I make a little basket out of my fingers. I put the gem in there like that. Hopefully you can see that. And then I just try to move my fingers. And then I just try to work the sides as evenly as possible. You have to hold both sides of this wire, otherwise when you want to bend this one wants to fall over. So keep it, together, or you can use pliers to help you get around that. I don't need sharp turns, so I just kind of broke the wire tension a little bit with my fingers and made it come around the rock. Okay, so I'm just coming around it just like this. And then I'll do the same on the other side. I'll make sure that I have my crystal situated the way I want it. Just kind of break the wire tension here a little bit with my fingers. See, my point wants to move. And I'll just hold it all together. Try to bring it around my crystal as gracefully as possible. So it kind of looks like this. Okay, just like the frame you're familiar with from the last one. Okay, and so I don't want to pop that little crystal, so I just kind of earmarked where they cross, and just with my fingers, because this is not a formal wrap, because it's a nice, free-form crystal, rough crystal. Not rough, but natural. So anyway, I'm just going to use my fingers and get control of my frame here. Ooh, got that little unattractive bend right there. I'm going to try to take that out. See that? I kind of try to make that a little more graceful. Just a little bit. Okay, that's pretty good. All right. Got to remember which way you want your crystal to sit in there. Okay, so you just got to kind of remember how your crystal goes in there. And as you can see, I'm going to pull wire from either side, from this very, very top frame wire, but from either side of these outside coils. It's a little closer in the front than it is, to the other side. And because my crystal is clear and beautiful, I'm going to try to make this a reversible frame, okay? So you can either hold these together. Try to get out of there. Come on. Or you can tape them together. Alright, so from here, I'm going to go ahead and just put a piece of tape around all of this. Now that I've got my frame shaped, I just want to help hold these two sides together. If you set up your first two pieces of tape clever, then you wouldn't have to put a third one. Okay, so it's there. What I want to do is pull a little wire over from the uppermost frame wire and the bottommost frame wires. Alright, and to do that, because I don't want a whole lot going over this crystal, to do that I'm going to use some very narrow flat nose. You could use chain links, you could use bent nose, but if you have this set, which is a pretty good set for everyone, including beginners, then you will have this little pair of flat nose, and it's about 2 millimeters. I'm going to keep my finger inside the frame there to hold that curve, and I'm not going to pull or push. I'm just going to turn my wrist to the right and cause a little divot in that wire. Okay, and I'm going to do the same to this side. I'm going to just get right beside that first coil on what we were calling frame wire 4, and then just turn. Okay, so you create this cute little shape. And then, the crystal is bulbous, so sometimes we want to turn, I think I bent them, okay, well that's okay. I turned these in at the top first. It's going to be the same design on both sides. So I actually did my upper wires first. So I'm going to reposition my crystal. And you see it's not flat, the crystal, so I want to pull these two front wires forward to give it some belly space to get in there with. So you can do that with your crystal in or out if you need to do it even. So I'm going to take my pliers right here on that curve that I first just went inward with, and now I'm going to come outward. And you can do it here. Maybe this way is a little easier. You know, take your plier right here, put your finger on that wire and pull outward to create some space. You see that? There's the profile. Okay, so we'll do the same to this side. There should be enough give here that your tape shouldn't buckle anything, but loosen up your tape if it starts to buckle when you do this. And you just pull these out right there at the tab, at the corner, according to what you need for your crystal. Okay. We'll band this neck together here in a minute. So now I'm going to slip my crystal back in here. And you'll see that I made this cute space for my cute little crystal, and I'm not worried that it's going to snap off and it can still be seen. I love that. Okay. So there, that is so pretty. And I don't want a lot around my Herkimer diamond. I want it, you know, it's just beautiful the way it is. I just want it secure in my basket. So with the crystal in place, I'm going to do pretty much the same thing to these two wires in the back. You can separate them with your finger if you need to. And from here, this time I'm going to grip it from its side here. Okay. Now that my crystal's in there, I'm going to actually make a forward bend first. See that? Just make a forward bend right at the edge of your coil. Crystal can still slip out. We haven't tightened anything up yet. So here again, I'm going to grip the uppermost wire. Try not to slip or else you'll nick it. You'll keep your thumb here to hold all the forwarding wire back so that you can make the wire bend. And just turn it forward like that. Okay, like that. And now you have some security, but you also have give that you can kind of position your crystal. So we're going to wrap the neck next, okay? But for now, take these 2 points, position your crystal the way you want it. Ooh, I want that point in a certain... Okay, there it is. Sometimes you have to reseat it like there. I just reset it because I know where I want that little crystal. And then just use your fingers and gently start to manipulate and caress these wires at the corners here, attractively over your crystal, you know, corners down here if you have them, or just snuggle them in so that it holds the crystal. Be careful not to snap anything if you have special features on your natural crystal. You see, I'm just gently pushing with my fingers. Oh, that wire kind of collapsed back. You see that? That one frame wire right there went all the way back. It's okay. Just gonna fix it. It probably happened. And it might happen to you. There it is. Because I didn't, well, because I'm using round wires, and so sometimes they slip, and that's what happened. Okay, I don't band this first just in case you want to make changes. Plus, we're not banding here, we're going to weave, right? And we have 2 sides of this crystal that are beautiful. So, you know, so we have all of these wires free to weave on either side as we create Bale and design for the top. And now with these two side wires, you can just stick your finger right in there and kind of separate them because I want some light around this crystal. I don't want. And to separate them, I just need to give a tiny little push. Okay? And if you don't want your crystal moving around, then start to push these wires a little closer to the shoulders up here. Just like that, but keep them graceful. Okay, that's not too much interference. I don't think so with my crystal. I'm doing this in copper on a Herkimer so that you can see the wire and the crystal. If this was silver on this Herkimer, might be a real hard time. Oops. Just want that a little more graceful. I want that line just slightly more graceful, and I dented it in a little bit more than I wanted for now, so just going to carefully get my plier in there and straighten it back out. Yeah, that's a little more elegant, right? Okay, beautiful. All right, and once we cinch up this neck, it'll get tighter. So for now, though, the crystal's in there. It's beautiful. You've got a beautiful little weave going on. You might have slight motion in your crystal. If you do, don't worry. We can, tighten that up once we start weaving on these upper wires. I'm going to start to weave up this neck and bring down design wires. So before I release my tape, I'm just going to band up all of this neck. I've cut a fresh piece of 28 gauge weaving wire, and I've made it 3 feet long. You can bobbin the end of your wires if you like, but I let it flow down the side of my leg just like yarn might. And we'll just take a leading, this about 3 inches. And if you're using round wire, you don't have to worry so much. These wires are, kind of come together at the neck like this. It was how we brought them together, but they might slip around a little bit. So you just try to get the wires as even as you can. I think I just pulled a bunch too much. And you'll just take just hold them, and you'll just take about 3 inches and make, 5 or 6 nice big coils around the whole stack, just like that, just to anchor your wire. Okay. You take this little fragment now. Your bent nose are great for working this small wire. And you can just feed it through a single coil here. There's no front or back. We'll just say that the front are where these design weaves are pointing, and where my little guy is here. So I'm wrapping just a couple of times around what would be the back. Mine's going to be reversible. Hopefully yours is reversible too, so we'll keep all sides as neat as possible. Okay, just a couple of times, and we can trim that off. Be careful when you cut that you don't cut your main weaving wire off. Then you can just turn that end down and tuck it up inside there. Okay, just like that. Alright, and now we have 3 feet of weaving wire attached. And I'm going to look at what I call the front of my pendant. Okay, and I'm going to remove all of this tape now. so that these wires are available to me. There's a lot of ways that you can weave on natural crystals like this. You can make it a little more formal Bale, or you can just go all free form and kind of what they call maybe heady style even. I'm going to do maybe something a little bit more traditional pendant style. Alright, so I've got my weaving wire here. I'm going to separate out the first two wires in my stack here that are in, you know, the frontmost position of my pendant. Alright. And I'm going to weave, I'm going to put a different weave pattern on these two wires right here. So I'm going to take my weaving wire and I'm just going to pass it in between these wires, and I'm going to make one single coil. Okay. I've got them bent kind of not quite at 90, but facing the front of my pendant here. These two will become my Bale wires. So I've made one coil. I'm going to take the second coil all the way around both frame wires. Try to bend these a little bit more forward so you can see, and you can bend yours a little more forward too. And then I'm going to come in between from underneath, make a complete coil around the back wire. Okay, use your fingernail and push those back. Then from underneath you'll come to the front frame wire. You'll do a complete 360 around it. You'll come up, jump over to the back wire, and you'll do a complete 360 around it. Push each coil back neatly and come from underneath. Go in between, do a complete 360 around the front frame wire. So everything is overhanded. From underneath, and do a complete 360 around the front frame wire. And as I'm weaving, these two wires are going to come together about like this. I want to keep that small gap in between them so that my weaving wire fits in between there neatly and I'm not struggling or buckling. Alright, so you'll weave till you get to about an inch, maybe an inch and a quarter. Okay, and I'll just weave with you. Try to get this so that you can see it. So we made a 360 around what I'm calling the back wire, but you know, they're both front wires, but it's just this upper wire and then this lower wire. A complete 360, and then up and over, complete 360, then under and over, complete 360, then up and over, complete 360, up and over, complete 360, up and over, complete 360, and occasionally I'll just use my fingers and push the weave back. Okay, it'll get a little easier once you get further away from the frame. Try to keep your coils neat. try to keep the tension even as you're working. And remember to push back. I'm at an odd angle underneath the camera. We all know that. So this would kind of be, you know, you at your, with your hands, you know, in front of you as if you were knitting. And rather than in this stiff left-handed motion, I'm holding my left hand like this so that you can see me weave and see the pattern. But I'm going to back my camera off now. If I were weaving in my lap, as though I were knitting, the motion would be more with both hands. Okay, I would bring this side closer to me, slip my wire in, you know, bring this side closer to me, you know, etc. As though you were knitting, so that there isn't strain you know, on your shoulders or your hands as you're working. Whoop, I just got a little bit tangled. Excuse me a second. You want to keep the space, you know, that this wire is draping down clear of obstacles. I just got caught on something. So, and your cat might get might get the wire too. But so anyway, you know, it's more like this, and not really a stiff hold on that left, you know, on the side that's holding your pendant. It's not so stiff like that, okay? I hope that makes sense to everyone. So, and every now and again, push back. Hold your weave steady as you push back, so because the longer this gets, you have the chance of bending it when you do that. All right, so I'll bring my camera close up again. And we'll just keep weaving until we make our distance. I'm doing a 360 now to my back or upper wire, or closest wire. 360 around the furthest wire. And you see that my weave wants to start to travel the faster I go. So just push it back. And then when you get at a comfortable distance, you can take your nylon jaw. Don't crush them because this is small weave wire now. But you can just tap, tap. Do gentle tapping to help settle them back. Just like that. You know, don't get into this habit because once they're long, you can dogleg your whole row of wires. Just tap, tap. Use your nylon jaw just to tap, tap. And then push back. You know, reopen your gap if needed, and continue your weave for the distance. I know that probably some of you know what these weave names are. I'm going to admit that I don't. I usually use numbers when I'm doing tutorials that are PDFs. But now that I'm on video and can talk to you, I'm just going to call them frame wires and numbers and weaving wires and positions. Maybe we can make up names or you guys can teach me what the names are. Alright, so I'm going to just continue. And I don't know if the names are really names of the weaves or if they're names of old basket weaves, perhaps, tapestry weaves, like herringbone. We do herringbone with wire. So maybe, you know, this one's called something. All right. The wires might want to twist on you, and that's okay. You just work patiently and keep it under control. Try not to let these wires poke my camera. A lot of times when we weave, we have several weaving wires that are, you know, just hanging out on the frame. So I've got about my 1.25 there, and that looks pretty good. It's a beautiful weave pattern, and you just want to be nice and tight like that, but not overly tight. I maintain this gap the entire way, and I'm gonna just leave my weaving wire, which there's probably about 1.5 feet left on it. Alright, so I'm facing the front of my pendant. I've got these wires that are hanging out here at the top, and I'm going to try to identify, so there's 3 to each side, so I'll try to just identify which 3 there are. And I'm going to pull them, kind of fan them out so I can see them, but also just pull them off a little bit like that. Okay. Alright, so you're just like that. You can hold this neck steady and just kind of work these wires a little bit down to horizontal. Just soft bends like that. Okay. And then you can raise, hold everything steady right here, always at the neck. Raise that bale wire back up and into position. You can make gentle adjustments. Make sure you're centered off to your pendant. And then either with your fingers or with a dowel, and I'm just going to use my fingers, just like we've done in all of our other tutorials. We're going to create a bend on these 2 wires for our bale and bring the weave down to meet the wrap on our necks. And I'm holding these 2 wires up and pushing in at the neck a little bit because I don't want to scratch my or knock anything off my crystal here. And my crystal is a little bit bulbous too, so it helps to get over it. All right, so I've got my weaving wires still in place, and I can secure these 2 wires in a lot of ways, but just to keep it consistent with what we've been learning, I'm going to take my weaving wire. I'm just going to go neatly all the way around the neck, bring in the weave wire 1 coil beneath itself each time, or as close to that as you can get. You know, just keep it nice and neat, and just work until you get to the base. Keep the tension fairly tight but not so crushing. Keep the coils neat, even though we might cover them up, just to still work neatly. And after you get, 5 or 6 of them and you feel like that's secure, hold everything steady right there at the neck, and then just make 2 complete wraps around these 2 back wires right here with your weaving wire. I'm going to have you leave the weaving wire on so that you get used to that. But you could cut it off if you felt like you were going to be done with it right here. I would anchor it, and let's just do that. You can anchor it always once on a single wire, on a single frame wire with 1 coil, and then just cut it off in the back and tuck it in there if you're done with it. But we're going to leave ours on right now. Okay, so now we have all of this available, just like, that's so pretty, just like in our November Back to Basics month. But now we've weaved our bale. We've captured a natural Herkimer Diamond crystal, which is not symmetrical or even flat. Okay, I'm just going to spread these 2 out left and right because I don't want anything over my crystal. And now we're just going to create design. If I didn't want anything more, of course I could just start cutting things off, but I could weave these wires, I could texture them, etc. So I'm going to do something similar and familiar with this because we're just learning to weave in this one for some of us newbies. Okay, so I have 6 design wires available to me, and I have 2 beautiful sides I want design on, and then I have 2 more frame wires that came from the bale. Alright, so starting with what I consider to be the front, I'm going to just turn these over just like we're familiar with. Okay, so I'm going to take the first one, I'm going to position it, and I'm going to just turn a little loop, little curve, and push it back in this first one, just like that. Kind of pull it off to the one side if you can. Okay, then I'm going to chase it with the center one. I'm looking at what I consider to be the most front of my pendant. And I'm going to make this loop just slightly above it. I'm going to bring the wires down together, just like that. Okay. pretty. I keep most of my design up and out because I don't want anything else on my Herkimer. So now I'm going to take one from the left here, the one from the left. I'm going to bend it forward 90 degrees, and I'm going to drop, again, another little curve that like we're familiar with down here. If you're using 20 gauge round, it might feel slightly softer and easier than the square wire. Okay, and while it's right there, I'm going to actually just raise it slightly. Whoop, wrong wire. I got that a little lower than I wanted it because we were talking. But let me just take it here at the corner, raise it, and pinch it down slightly. There we go. Looks better. And I'm going to bring the next one down, just above and over it. Push back. Snuggle it up to this one and get these two wires, nice and side by side here. And again, they don't need to be the same. I'm actually going to raise this one again too because I don't like them the same. So from the back, I'm going to pull it back and then push it down to get more height on it. I like that better. Okay, I'm going to readjust my cute little curves here and push it all nice and flat at the neck. So I've got my two wires I just flipped over. Put a better curve on that right there with my thumbnail. Okay, got these two wires I just flipped over. And over here I've got these two wires I just flipped over. Very pretty. Okay, now let's go flip to what we consider to be the back. I know we've got a weaving wire that's still here and convenient for us. And I have two design wires here that are dropped down the body already. Alright, so I can use them, I can bring them up, or I can use them on the lower part of the pendant, and then I've got these two. Since I flipped all this way, I'm going to, of course, flip this one in this direction for this side, and I'm going to kind of have it meet up with this lower one down here that was already there. Okay, I'm going to do the same with this. Doesn't have to be the same height. You just want to make sure you leave room for chains, beads, whatever your neck gear is. I'm going to flip it over this way. We can add some elegance here in a minute, so don't worry. Just get it flipped the height you want it, kind of like that. I'm going to get it lined up with the frame wire I already have down here. Okay? Phew. Okay. So before we go further, because we might need the distance, I'm going to make design, make a little elegance on these top loops, and then we can proceed to weave. So there is no front or back, they're both, so just handle them carefully. And I like to start with the lower ones and just grip carefully. You're not really gripping, you're just kind of nudging them out, flare them out a little bit, give some elegance. If you can handle them from the back side of the loop, try to do that. Hold the curve here at the neck so that it actually bends out. See that? And then go to your next layer. Kind of flip them out a little bit. You don't have to death grip anything. Careful not to nick these design wires as you're doing this. little bit of plier control. Okay, so cute. So cute. All right, so let's start with the side that, in my case, our case, is the back. We left a weaving wire here for us to use. So let's continue weaving. We can change the weave pattern, or we can continue for consistency the pattern we learned up here on the 2 wires that are here to the back right. So I'm just going to continue with that pattern, and I'm just going to make, hopefully you can see all this, a 360 with that weaving wire around both of them. And you'll be, pretty on this front one here because, oh, there, line them up, because it's going to be to the front of your pendant. So we'll go 360 around it. Well, I say to the other front of your pendant. You'll circle both of them. And sometimes with weaving, we have to get into weird positions like this. Okay, so that I can get to that wire. And then you'll 360 the opposite wire. Come across the front of the wires. 360 the opposite wire. Go all the way around it. Using my fingernail to push the weave down each time as I can. Okay. 360 all the way around this wire. Come around to the back. 360 all the way around this wire. Come around the front. 360 all the way around this wire. Come around the back. 360 around this wire. Come around the front. 360 around this wire. 360 around this wire. Okay, so we're going to weave these 2 wires until you get to about this coil. Then we'll start to bend them. So you can just eyeball your own distance, because these crystals are all going to be different. And remember to work carefully so that your weaves are neat and clean. And I want to make a point in showing you we don't necessarily need to do it with this one, but if you needed to attach these 2 wires to this frame up here, you could grab one of these loops, can grab one of these bare frame wires that are covering your stone. We're going to do it down here, but I just want to point it out in case you need to up here. Okay? With this or any other build, you're always looking for an opportunity, if you think you need to secure the weaved wires onto the frame without having to add another wire later. While you're weaving, grab it if you need that neck to stay down while we're here. And we'll do it, So I'm on a 360 here, but instead of just doing the 360 on this wire, I'm going to come back and have that 360 grab this frame wire down here also. I'm just getting in there, down there, because I can manage it. I can get through easily. Okay. So now when I make I haven't stepped out of my weave pattern, but I have grabbed that frame wire at the bottom there to anchor kind of this band of weave right there so that it doesn't flail out. Okay, and I'll just continue my weave pattern. If I feel like I need to grab, more than one loop, then I just do it a couple of times as I pass over it. Otherwise, just once is probably enough to keep it stable. And I just continue my pattern. And it doesn't look like there was any interruption. Or any clunky add-on right there to band that. It's just one stitch. And you get faster at weaving the more you weave. It's just like knitting. After a while, you recognize the patterns, you know the tension of the wire, and you can pretty much, weave in front of TV even, because a lot of these little patterns you just start counting in your head automatically. Alright, so I'm just going to keep weaving. My coils are neat and side by side. My tension is even, and I'm pushing my coils back. It's not a brutal, force thing. It's just a controlled tension thing. Just like knitting. Okay. Make sure you have some really good lighting. This becomes, tedious to the eyes. We're doing a pretty simple pendant here. I'm putting in a decent amount of weave just to kind of give you the weaving practice and, to give you a beautiful pendant, fully weaved pendant. But some of these weaves can take, some of these big weaves can take more than a day or two, depending on your tolerance for how long you can do this before your eyes and hands, hurt or start to fatigue. I shouldn't say hurt. Okay, so the other reason why I might want to tie in to these frame wires right here is because I might not want to weave all the way down the pendant. I might want to snip the wire and curl up right here, in which case I would have, I could use this this weaving wire and attach to here, and we might do that at the bottom. I don't want to put any design over too much over my crystal. If you didn't use a crystal like this, I'm looking at what would be the back here. If you didn't use a crystal like this would be the front. We'd be weaving on the back of maybe your cabochon, okay? Because this would work with cabochon too. It's just the basic, traditional frame, but this time, for this month in December, where you've used round wires and we're weaving instead of using half round for banding. And you can manage these weaving wires however you want. If you can put a bobbin at the end of these. I don't have the patience to prepare a bobbin, so I just weave with 3 and 4 feet at a time, 2 and 3 feet, and let it trail down. I don't have a cat in the house either. Sometimes that makes a difference. Okay, so I'm just going to keep going. I'm almost at my distance. I'm weaving a little odd with my fingers. Again, as a reminder, it's because I'm underneath the camera. You want to make sure that you're sitting comfortably with this more like it were in your lap, as though you were knitting. Or not in your lap, but you know, closer to your body, as though you were knitting. Be careful as you're holding everything, just to not take anything out of shape as you're working. It's hard to see, but I really am just holding these two wires. I've got my fingers kind of just resting and supporting the frame. I'm holding close to the weave here because you got to, you know, have some leverage on these frame wires so that they don't just bobble around as you weave. Okay, so a little bit more. My intent is to kind of curve around this edge. So I've got weaving to about here to do. And you can do the pre-curve first. Just make sure you re-separate your wires right here so that you stay consistent. And I've got probably about 4 or 5 inches left on this length. And we've only, you know, used this one big length to get all the way around the bale and then flipped over to here. And you can see it kind of looks like the bale just continues off onto the weave. And a lot of weave, you want to try, you know, sometimes it depends on the pattern, I shouldn't say, but you want to try to flow along, at least I do, without, you know, too many cuts if you can avoid it. But the wire's so small. If you cut and tuck and you're clever about it, it'll all stay in place. Okay, and right about here I'm going to stop for a second. I'm going to tap my wires with my nylon jaw before I tie it all down. Gently tap, tap. And then I'm going to turn this curve. I'm using the pad of my finger to help give it a spot to kind of curve on. And I'm just going to shape these wires down the side of my pendant here. And before I get too much further, you see where my weave wire meets the frame. I can lock this into place a couple of times by grabbing that wire a couple of times right there. So I'm just like that. I can see it here a little bit, which is nice. Looks nice on both sides. So just right there, take this weaving end, go around this frame wire 5 times. Try to get it close to that original coil. And don't let there be any little bubbles. You know, don't pull it so tight you break it, but okay, make about 5 of them just so it looks deliberate and it's secure. Maybe just 3. And then my fingers can't get down in there, so to push that coil, I'm going to use the tips of my pliers. You know, if you feel like 2 will hold your wires in place, and you see they're starting to cup, so I'm just going to get them under control. Sometimes you have to put a little boss into it like that. Okay. Now I'm just going to snip it right there and tuck that cut. And while it's secure and it's neat, it's kind of an unsightly spot. There we go. You see? So I might drop a curl right there just to cover that bit. So with these two, I'll take this one. I don't want to be on my gemstone, so I'm going to bring it really close. Okay. I'm going to chase it with this one, because these are designed, I don't need them to do much. I'm just going to take it, chase it right over that corner. Just use your fingers and work it into some elegance, just like that. And then push back slightly and open it up. Okay, snip this first one very close to the edge like that. That's probably a total length of 1/4 of an inch. And then you can take some round nose pliers, grip that tip, turn a super tight turn straight into that space. You could also, if this were the other side, or if you wanted to, you could drop a bead in there, but let's just do wire. Okay, so I'm just going to make a cute little turn like that right there.